Commander Jake Harris stood in front of the mirror in his small room on the space station. He looked at his face and tried to understand how his life had come to this point. 3 days ago, he was just a normal military officer. Now he was going to marry an alien princess he had never met. The war between humans and the Valari Empire had lasted for 15 years. Millions of people had died on both sides. Cities had burned. Planets had fallen. And now, finally, both sides wanted peace. But the Valari had one condition that no one expected. They wanted a human man to marry Princess Kethera. Jake was not sure why they picked him. He was a good soldier, yes. He had won many battles and earned many medals. But he had no important family. He had no political friends. He was alone in the world, and that made him easy to sacrifice. Admiral Costa had called him into her office 3 days ago. She was a small woman with gray hair and cold eyes. She did not waste time with kind words. "Harris, you have been selected for a special mission," she said. "The Valari want a human husband for their princess. You will be that husband." Jake had stared at her for a long moment. "Is this a joke, Admiral? Does this look like a joke?" She pushed a data tablet across the desk. "The Valari control the jump gates. Without those gates, our ships cannot travel fast enough to protect our colonies. We need this alliance, and they want this marriage. Why me?" Admiral Costa looked at him without any emotion on her face. "Because you have no family who will miss you if things go wrong. Because you have proven you can survive difficult situations. And because you did not say no when I asked." She was right about that. Jake had not said no. He had taken the data tablet and read about Princess Kethera and the Valari wedding customs. What he read made his blood run cold, but he still did not say no. Now he was on a transport ship heading to Kethos Prime, the Valari homeworld. The ship was comfortable enough, but Jake could not relax. He kept reading the files about the Valari, trying to understand what he was walking into. The Valari were old. Their empire had existed for 12,000 years. They had conquered hundreds of planets and absorbed dozens of species into their civilization. They were tall, most of them standing over 7 feet. Their skin changed color based on their emotions, shifting between purple and silver, and sometimes other colors that humans did not have names for. Their eyes had no pupils, just swirling patterns that looked like tiny galaxies. But the most important thing about the Valari was their minds. They were psionic, which meant they could touch other minds with their thoughts. They could share memories and feelings. They could sense lies. And during their wedding ceremonies, they performed something called the bonding ritual. Jake read about the bonding ritual many times. It was a test. The Valari believed that a true marriage required a complete joining of minds. During the ritual, the bride and groom would share everything, every memory, every emotion, every thought. For Valari, this was difficult but possible. For other species, it was usually fatal. 47 men had tried to marry Princess Kethera before. All of them had failed the bonding ritual. Some had died. Others had lost their minds completely. A few had survived but were broken forever, unable to speak or think clearly for the rest of their lives. Jake closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He was scared. He was not too proud to admit that. But he was also a soldier, and soldiers did not run away from their duty. The transport ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel, and Jake got his first look at Kethos Prime. It was beautiful in a strange and frightening way. The planet had 3 suns, and their light mixed together to create colors he had never seen before. Huge crystal towers rose from the surface, reaching so high that they touched the clouds. The cities below sparkled like jewels scattered across the land. A Valari escort ship guided them down to the surface. Jake watched through the window as they passed over mountains made of dark stone and rivers that glowed with blue light. Everything here was different. Everything here was alien. The ship landed on a platform outside the royal palace. Jake stepped out and felt the gravity push down on him. Kethos Prime was heavier than Earth, and his legs had to work harder with each step. The air smelled sweet and strange, with hints of flowers he could not name. A group of Valari waited for him on the platform. They were dressed in robes that seemed to flow like water, and they looked at him with curious eyes. In the middle of the group stood a female Valari who was taller than the others. Her skin was deep purple, and her galaxy eyes burned with intensity. This was Princess Kethra. Jake knew it without being told. She walked toward him slowly, her movements smooth and powerful like a predator approaching prey. When she stopped in front of him, she had to look down to meet his eyes. Jake was not a short man, but she made him feel small. "You're the human," she said. Her voice was strange. It had layers to it, as if several people were speaking at once. The sound vibrated in Jake's chest and made his teeth ache. "Commander Jake Harris," he replied, keeping his voice steady. "I am here for the wedding." Kethra studied him for a long moment. Her skin shifted slightly, showing hints of silver around the edges. Jake did not know what that meant, but he suspected it was not respect. "You are smaller than I expected," she said. "I get that a lot." A few of the Valari behind her made sounds that might have been laughter. It was not friendly laughter. They were mocking him, and they wanted him to know it. High Priestess Zorath stepped forward. She was the oldest Valari. Jake had seen, with skin that had faded to pale gray, and eyes that swirled more slowly than the others. She moved with the careful steps of someone who had lived a very long time. "Welcome, Commander Harris," she said. Her voice was softer than Kethra's, but there was no warmth in it. "You have come to take part in the sacred marriage ceremony. Do you understand what this means?" "I have read the files," Jake said. "I know about the 3 days. I know about the bonding ritual." Zorath smiled, and her teeth were like shards of black glass. "You have read files. But reading is not understanding. No human has ever survived the bonding ritual. The Valari mind is too strong, too deep. Your species is young. Your minds are fragile. My species has survived a lot of things that should have killed us," Jake replied. "We are harder to break than we look." Zorath's smile did not change, but something flickered in her ancient eyes. Was it interest? Amusement? Jake could not tell. "We shall see," she said. "The ceremony begins tomorrow. Tonight, you will rest. You will need your strength." Jake was led into the palace by silent servants. The hallways were vast and filled with strange beauty. Sculptures of alien creatures lined the walls. Paintings showed battles and ceremonies from thousands of years ago. The floor was made of crystal that was warm under his feet. His room was large, with furniture that was designed for Valari bodies, not human ones. The bed was too long, the chairs too tall. But Jake did not complain. He sat on the edge of the bed and looked out the window at the 3 setting suns. Somewhere in this palace, Princess Kethra was preparing for the wedding. She probably expected him to fail like all the others. She probably expected him to break. Jake clenched his fists. He thought about Earth, about the colonies, about all the people who were counting on this alliance. He thought about the soldiers who had died in the war, and the ones who would die if the fighting started again. He could not fail. He would not fail. Tomorrow, the ceremony would begin. Jake did not know if he was ready, but he knew one thing for certain. He was not going to give up without a fight. The second day of the ceremony was called the Day of Gifts. Jake had spent most of the night preparing for this. The tradition required both the bride and groom to give something meaningful, something that showed their true character. Jake had thought about this carefully. The Valari valued strength and honesty above all things. A weak gift would make them lose respect for him. A dishonest gift would be even worse. The ceremony took place in a smaller room than the amphitheater. Only the most important nobles were present, maybe 100 in total. Princess Kethera stood on a raised platform at one end of the room, dressed in ceremonial armor that looked like it had grown from living metal. Lord Vareth stood near her, his arms crossed and his eyes full of contempt. High Priestess Zarth announced the beginning of the gift exchange. Kethera would go first. The princess stepped forward and held out her hand. In her palm was a small crystal that glowed with inner light. Jake had read about these. They were called memory crystals, and they could store the experiences and thoughts of a Velari for thousands of years. "I give you the memories of my ancestors," Kethera said. Her voice was formal, but Jake could sense something deeper beneath the words. 12,000 years of history. Every triumph and failure, every joy and sorrow. This is who we are, Commander Harris. This is what you are asking to join. She placed the crystal in Jake's hand. It was warm, almost hot, and he could feel power humming inside it. This was not just a gift. It was a test. She was showing him exactly how old and powerful the Velari were, reminding him that humanity was just a child compared to them. Jake bowed his head in thanks. "I am honored by your gift, Princess. I will treasure it." Now it was his turn. Jake reached into his pocket and pulled out a small data chip. It looked simple, almost ordinary, nothing like the beautiful crystal Kethera had given him. Lord Vareth laughed. "This is your gift? A piece of human technology? How pathetic." Jake ignored him. He walked forward and held out the chip to Kethera. "This contains the complete tactical records of the Battle of Centauri Gate," he said. The room went silent. The Battle of Centauri Gate was famous. It was the first time humans had defeated the Velari in open combat. 200 human ships against 1,000 Velari warships. And somehow, impossibly, the humans had won. Lord Vareth stopped laughing. His face twisted with anger. "This is an insult. He mocks our greatest defeat." "No," Jake said firmly. "I offer our greatest victory not as mockery but as honesty. You respect strength. This battle showed our strength. These records contain every decision we made, every sacrifice. I give you our most guarded military secrets, because this marriage must be built on truth." Kethera took the chip slowly. She inserted it into a device on her wrist and spent a long time reading the information. Her skin shifted through several colors as she processed what she was seeing. Finally, she looked up at Jake. "Commander Zoe Patterson," she said quietly. She was the one who ordered the attack that broke our defensive line. "Yes," Jake said. She died 30 seconds later. Her ship was the first through the breach. "I killed her," Kethera said. Her voice was flat, emotionless. "My warship was at the center of our formation. I fired the shot that destroyed her vessel." The tension in the room became so thick that Jake could almost taste it. Every Velari was watching him, waiting to see how he would react. Would he show anger, grief? Would he attack the princes who had killed one of humanity's greatest heroes? Jake met Kethera's galaxy eyes. "Good," he said simply. She would have wanted it to be a worthy opponent. Silence. Then, slowly, Kethera's skin shifted to a deep violet color. Jake did not know exactly what that meant, but he thought it might be respect. "You are strange, Jake Harris," she said. "So I have been told." The gift exchange was complete. The nobles began to talk among themselves, their voices a mixture of surprise and confusion. No one had expected the human to give such a bold gift. No one had expected him to react so calmly to learning who had killed Commander Patterson. Lord Vareth pushed through the crowd and stopped in front of Jake. He was even taller than Kethera, with skin that was almost black and eyes that burned with fury. "You think you are clever," he hissed. "You think your words and your gifts will save you, but they will not. Tomorrow night, you will break like all the others. My sister will shatter your weak human mind, and you will spend the rest of your life as a drooling fool." Jake looked up at him without flinching. "Maybe, or maybe I will surprise you." Vareth laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Humans cannot surprise us. You are nothing but animals pretending to be civilized. The only reason you are still alive is because we find you amusing." Jake felt anger rise inside him, but he pushed it down. Losing his temper would only prove Vareth right. "I guess we will find out tomorrow night," he said calmly. Vareth's eyes narrowed. For a moment, Jake thought the alien lord might attack him right there. But then Vareth turned and walked away, his long robe swirling behind him. That evening, Jake sat alone in his room, looking at the memory crystal Kethra had given him. He was not sure how to access it, but even holding it made him feel strange. He could sense the weight of 12,000 years pressing against his mind. Waiting to be explored, a knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. He opened it to find Kethra standing in the hallway, wearing simple clothes instead of her ceremonial armor. She looked almost ordinary like this, though she still towered over him. "May I come in?" she asked. Jake stepped aside and let her enter. She looked around his room with curiosity, studying the few personal items he had brought from Earth. There was a photograph of his parents, a worn copy of his favorite book, and a small medal he had earned in his first battle. "You travel light," she said. "I did not know how long I would be staying." Kethra turned to face him. "I wanted to thank you for your gift. The tactical records are impressive. I have studied the battle many times, but I never understood how you won until now." "We were desperate," Jake said honestly. "Desperation can make people very creative. It can also make them reckless." "True, but sometimes recklessness is the only option left." Kethra sat down on one of the two tall chairs, and Jake sat across from her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Kethra said something unexpected. "I do not want you to die tomorrow night." Jake blinked in surprise. "That is kind of you to say." "It is not kindness. It is exhaustion." She leaned back in her chair and looked at the ceiling. 47 suitors. 47 minds breaking under the weight of the bond. I feel each one of them die or shatter. Their final moments become part of my memory forever. I am tired of carrying the dead, Jake Harris. Jake did not know what to say. He had not thought about what the bonding ritual cost Kethra. He had only thought about his own survival. "I am sorry," he said finally. "That must be terrible." "It is." She looked at him again, and her eyes seemed less alien somehow, less cold. "That is why I came to warn you. The bonding ritual is not just a test of strength. It is a sharing of everything. Every memory, every emotion, every secret you have ever had. Nothing can be hidden. Nothing can be protected. I understand. Do you? Humans value privacy. You hide your true selves behind walls and masks. In the bond, there are no walls. There are no masks. I will see everything you are, and you will see everything I am. Most minds cannot handle such complete exposure. They retreat into themselves and never come back." Jake thought about this for a long moment. Everything he was, every fear, every failure, every shameful moment from his past, all of it would be laid bare before Kethra and the watching priests. "I do not have anything to hide," he said slowly. "I have made mistakes. I have done things I regret, but I have never done anything I am truly ashamed of. Maybe that will help." Kethra studied him with those swirling eyes. "You are an honest man, Jake Harris. That is rare among any species. It is the only way I know how to be." She stood up and walked toward the door. Before she left, she turned back to him one more time. "Whatever happens tomorrow night, I want you to know that you have earned my respect. Not many beings have done that. Jake smiled slightly. Thank you, Princess. That means more than you know. She nodded once and was gone. Jake stood alone in his room, thinking about everything she had said. Tomorrow night would be the hardest thing he had ever done. He might not survive it. He might end up broken and empty like the 47 men who had come before him. But he would not give up. He would not run away. He was human. And humans did not know how to quit. Jake lay down on the too long bed and closed his eyes. He needed rest. He needed to be ready. Tomorrow, the real test would begin. The first day of the ceremony was called the Day of Words. Jake learned this when a servant came to his room at dawn and handed him a scroll made of something that felt like silk, but shined like metal. You must speak your history. Before the court, the servant said. She was young by Valari standards, with skin that shifted nervously between pale purple and gray. You will tell us of your people, from the beginning until now. You will hold nothing back. Jake looked at the scroll. Strange symbols covered its surface, but as he watched, they changed into English. Valari technology was impressive. How long do I have to speak? He asked, until the court is satisfied. The last suitor spoke for 3 hours. He was considered acceptable. Jake nodded slowly. 3 hours of talking about human history. He could do that. He had studied history in school, and he had lived through enough of it himself. The servant led him through the palace to a massive amphitheater carved into the heart of a mountain. The walls were lined with seats that rose up and up until they disappeared into shadow. 10,000 Valari nobles sat in those seats, their galaxy eyes fixed on the small platform at the center. Jake walked to that platform alone. His footsteps echoed in the vast space. He could feel the weight of all those eyes pressing down on him like a physical force. The Valari were not just watching him. They were testing him, probing his mind with their psionic abilities, looking for weakness. He reached the platform and turned to face the crowd. Princess Cathura sat in a special section near the front, her purple skin dark and her expression bored. She did not expect much from him. None of them did. High Priestess Zora stood and raised one long-fingered hand. The crowd fell silent. Commander Jake Harris of Earth, she announced. You stand before the court of the Valari Empire. You wish to join our royal family through marriage. Before this can happen, you must prove that your people are worthy of such an honor. Tell us of humanity. Tell us everything. Jake took a deep breath. He had prepared for this. He had spent the whole night going over human history in his mind, choosing the stories he would tell. My people come from a small planet called Earth, he began. It is a young world, and we are a young species. We have only traveled among the stars for 300 years. Compared to the Valari Empire, we are children. He saw some of the nobles nod with approval. They liked that he admitted human weakness. They expected him to continue bowing and scraping, to tell them how great they were and how small humanity was. But that was not Jake's plan. We are young, he continued, but we are not weak. In our short time in the galaxy, we have faced things that should have destroyed us. And we are still here. He told them about the Cricks. The Cricks were a hive mind species that had attacked human colonies 80 years ago. They were like insects, billions of them sharing one consciousness, and they saw humans as food. The Cricks' war lasted 12 years, Jake said. They outnumbered us 1,000 to 1. They destroyed our colony on New Haven, killed 3 billion people in a single month. Every military expert said we could not win. The Cricks were too many, too fast, too coordinated. He paused and looked around the amphitheater. The Valari were listening now, really listening. Even Cathura had leaned forward slightly in her seat. We did not care what the experts said. We fought them on every planet, in every system. When they destroyed our ships, we built more. When they killed our soldiers, more soldiers took their place. And slowly, year by year, we pushed them back. Jake's voice grew stronger as he spoke. He was not just telling history anymore. He was living it, remembering the stories his grandfather had told him about serving in the Krix War. In the final battle, a woman named Commander Lisa Monroe led a fleet of 300 ships against the Krix homeworld. She knew she would not survive. She knew most of her people would not survive. But she went anyway, because that was what had to be done. He told them how Monroe's fleet had broken through the Krix defenses, how they had destroyed the central node that connected all the Krix mines. Without that connection, the Krix became confused, uncoordinated. They fell apart. Commander Monroe died in that battle, Jake said quietly. So did 200,000 others. But they won. They saved humanity. And we remember them. The amphitheater was completely silent. Jake could see expressions of surprise on some of the Valari faces. They had not expected a story like this. He continued. He told them about the Dominion occupation, when a rival empire had conquered Earth itself and held it for 50 years. He told them about the resistance fighters who had never stopped fighting, the ordinary people who had risked everything for freedom. My grandmother was a resistance fighter, Jake said. She was 15 years old when the Dominion came. By the time she was 20, she had destroyed 3 enemy bases and freed 200 prisoners. She never stopped believing that we would win, even when everyone else had given up. He told them about the liberation of Earth, about the day when human ships finally broke through the Dominion blockade and brought freedom back to their homeworld. He described the celebrations, the tears, the joy of a people who had been beaten down but never broken. And then he told them about the war with the Tavalians, the tears, the joy of a people who had been beaten down but never broken. And then he told them about the war with the Valari. The atmosphere in the amphitheater changed. Some of the nobles shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This was dangerous ground. 15 years ago, our peoples met for the first time, Jake said. It did not go well. Your empire saw us as another species to conquer, another civilization to absorb. But you were wrong about us. He spoke about the battles, the defeats, the terrible losses humanity had suffered. The Valari were stronger in almost every way. Their ships were faster, their weapons more powerful, their soldiers more trained. Humanity should have lost quickly. But we did not lose, Jake said. We fought you to a standstill. We gave as good as we got. And eventually, even the great Valari Empire had to admit that this little species from a small planet was not going to surrender. He looked directly at Kethra now. You asked me to recount my history as if it should shame me, as if being young and small means we are not worthy. But I stand here today because my species does not know how to quit. We have faced extinction again and again, and we are still here. We are still fighting. Jake stopped speaking. For a long moment, the amphitheater was completely silent. Then, slowly, High Priestess Zorith began to clap. The sound was strange, like stones clicking together. One by one, other Valari joined her, until the whole amphitheater was filled with the sound of alien applause. Not all of them were clapping. Jake could see some of the nobles scowling, unhappy with his words. Lord Vareth, Kethra's older brother, looked at him with pure hatred in his swirling eyes. But enough of them were impressed. That was what mattered. That night, there was a feast in Jake's honor. He sat at a long table filled with foods he did not recognize, surrounded by Valari nobles who watched his every move. Most of them ignored him or spoke about him as if he could not hear, but a few asked him questions about Earth and humanity. Jake answered them honestly. He talked about human art and music, about sports and games, about the simple pleasures of life on a young world. Some of the Valari seemed genuinely interested. Others were clearly just looking for weaknesses. After the feast, when most of the guests had left, Princess Cathora approached him. "You spoke well today," she said. Her skin was a neutral shade of purple, giving nothing away. "Thank you." "Do not thank me. Speaking well will not save you in the bonding ritual." She studied his face with those galaxy eyes. "Why do you not seem afraid?" Jake thought about the question carefully. "I am afraid," he admitted. "I would be stupid not to be. But fear does not change what needs to be done. It never has, for my people." Cathora was silent for a moment. Then she did something unexpected. She sat down in the chair next to him, her tall body folding gracefully into the seat. "I have bonded with all 47 of my previous suitors," she said quietly. "I felt them break. I felt their minds shatter like glass under the weight of my consciousness. It is not pleasant." Jake looked at her. For the first time, he saw something other than arrogance in her expression. There was sadness there, and maybe even loneliness. "You do not want another one to break," he said. "No." She looked away. "But I cannot hold back during the ritual. The bond requires complete honesty, complete openness. I cannot protect you, even if I wish to." Jake nodded slowly. "Then I will have to protect myself." Cathora turned back to him, and something that might have been respect flickered across her face. "You are either very brave or very foolish, Jake Harris." "Probably both," he said. She almost smiled. "Rest well tonight. Tomorrow is the day of gifts, and then—" She did not finish the sentence. She did not need to dot. Then came the wedding night. Then came the trial that had broken everyone before him. Jake watched her walk away, her tall form disappearing into the shadows of the palace. He did not know if he could survive what was coming, but he knew he had to try, for humanity, for the Alliance, for all the people who were counting on him. He would not give up. He would not break. He would endure. The third day arrived too quickly. Jake had barely slept, but he felt strangely calm as the servants came to prepare him for the bonding ritual. They dressed him in simple white clothes and led him through hallways that went deep underground. The air grew cooler as they descended, and the walls changed from crystal to solid stone. The bonding chamber was at the very heart of the palace, buried beneath a mountain. It was a spherical room carved from a single massive crystal that glowed with soft light. Patterns moved across its surface, shifting and swirling like living things. They responded to emotions, Jake realized. The chamber could feel what everyone inside was feeling. 12 priests stood in a circle around the edges of the room. Their skin was pale gray, like High Priestess Zarath, and their eyes moved slowly. They were the oldest Valari Jake had seen, ancient beings who had witnessed thousands of these rituals. Down in the center of the chamber stood Cathora. She had removed her armor for the first time since Jake had met her. Without it, she looked different. He could see scars on her arms and shoulders, marks from countless battles. She was a warrior, just like him. She looked at Jake as he entered, and her skin flickered through several colors before settling on deep purple. "You came," she said. "Did you think I would run away? Others have tried. They never made it far." High Priestess Zarath stepped forward. Her voice echoed in the crystal chamber, bouncing off every surface. "We are gathered to witness the bonding of Princess Cathora of the Valari Empire and Commander Jake Harris of the Human Alliance. This ritual is sacred. It cannot be stopped once it begins. The bond will form gradually, and both participants must maintain their sense of self until dawn. If they succeed, they will be truly married, their consciousness joined forever. If they fail—" She did not finish the sentence. Jake walked to the center of the chamber and stood facing Cathora. Up close, he could see that her galaxy eyes were spinning faster than usual. She was nervous, he realized. Maybe even scared. "Are you ready?" she asked quietly. "No," Jake admitted. "But I am going to do it anyway." Something that might have been a smile crossed her face. "That is very human of you." Zorith raised her hands, and the 12 priests began to chant. The words were in a language Jake did not understand, but he could feel their power. The crystal walls began to glow brighter, and the patterns moved faster. "Join hands," Zorith commanded. Jake reached out and took Kethra's hands in his. Her skin was warm, almost hot, and he could feel energy pulsing through her. The ritual began. The first wave hit Jake like a physical blow. Suddenly, he was not in the bonding chamber anymore. He was somewhere else. Someone else. He was a small Valari child learning to walk, taking her first steps while her mother watched with pride. He felt the strength in tiny legs, the joy of movement, the warmth of family. Then the memory shifted. He was older now, maybe 10 years old by human standards. He held a training blade in his hands, and it was almost too heavy to lift. His father stood before him, his expression stern. Again, his father said, "You must be perfect. You are a princess. Weakness is not allowed." He felt the blade rise and fall, rise and fall. His muscles burned. His hands blistered. But he did not stop. He would never stop. He would be perfect. More memories came, faster and faster. Jake experienced Kethra's entire childhood in what felt like seconds. He felt her loneliness in the palace, surrounded by servants but never truly seeing a friend. He felt her first kill in training, the shock and horror that she quickly learned to hide. He felt her mother's death, the grief that she buried so deep that even she could barely find it. And through it all, Jake fought to hold on to himself. It was the hardest thing he had ever done. Kethra's memories were so strong, so vivid, that they threatened to wash away his own identity. He kept forgetting who he was. He kept thinking he was Valari, that these were his memories, his emotions. But then he would remember something. His mother's face. The smell of earth after rain. The sound of his best friend Danny laughing at a joke. These small things pulled him back, reminded him that he was Jake Harris, that he was human. The memories kept coming. He experienced Kethra's first command, the weight of responsibility crushing down on her shoulders. He felt the terror and excitement of battle, the way the ship moved around her like an extension of her body. He felt the deaths of her crew members, each one a wound that never fully healed. And then he saw the war. He saw humanity through Valari eyes. Kethra had thought humans were weak at first. Small, fragile, easily broken. Her first battle against them confirmed this belief. Her ship destroyed 3 human vessels in minutes, and she barely felt challenged. But then the humans adapted. They learned from their defeats. They came back stronger, smarter, more determined. Battle after battle, they refused to give up. They refused to die quietly. Jake felt Kethra's frustration turn to confusion, and then to something that might have been respect. These little creatures were not supposed to be this hard to kill. They were not supposed to fight this well. The Battle of Centauri Gate. Jake experienced it from Kethra's perspective now. He felt her confidence at the beginning, when the Valari fleet outnumbered the humans 5-1. He felt her surprise when the human ships began their desperate charge. He felt her admiration when Commander Patterson's vessel broke through the line, and he felt her finger press the firing button that ended Patterson's life. There was no joy in that memory, only a strange sadness. Kethra had respected Patterson even as she killed her. She had recognized a worthy opponent. Time had no meaning in the bond. Minutes or hours passed, Jake could not tell. The memories kept coming, an endless flood of experiences and emotions. He screamed sometimes, though he was not aware of it. His nose bled. His hands shook, but he held on. and somewhere in the flood of Kethra's memories, Jake realized that she was experiencing his too. She saw his childhood on a colony world, the recycled air and cramped corridors of a space station. She felt his pride when he earned his military commission. She experienced his first battle, the terror and confusion that he learned to control. She felt his loneliness, so similar to her own. Two people shaped by duty, never allowed to show weakness, never allowed to truly connect with anyone. She saw Danny's death, Jake's best friend, killed in a battle against the Volari. The grief was still fresh, even after all these years. Through the bond, Kethra felt that grief as if it were her own, and she felt something else, something she had not expected. Jake did not hate her. Even though her people had killed his friend, even though they had caused so much pain, he did not hate her. He was tired of war, tired of death. He wanted peace, real peace, not just an absence of fighting. The night stretched on. Jake felt himself weakening. The constant flood of memories was draining him, pulling apart his sense of self piece by piece. He could feel the edge of madness waiting for him, the darkness that had swallowed all the others. But every time he started to slip, he pulled himself back. He thought of his parents, his home, his duty. He thought of all the humans who were counting on him. He refused to let go. Kethra fought too, he realized. She was struggling just as hard as he was. The bond was not easy for her either, even though her mind was stronger. She was carrying Jake's memories now, feeling his emotions, experiencing his entire life. They held each other up. When Jake started to fall, he felt Kethra's strength supporting him. When she started to lose her grip, his determination pulled her back. Together, they survived the night. When dawn finally came, when the first rays of the three suns pierced the crystal chamber, Jake was still standing. He was changed. He was exhausted. But he was still himself. The priest had stopped chanting. They stared at Jake with expressions of pure shock. Nothing like this had ever happened before. High Priestess Zorth stepped forward, her ancient face showing something that might have been wonder. She examined both Jake and Kethra carefully, using her psionic abilities to study the bond that had formed between them. "Impossible," she whispered. "The bond is complete." He survived. Jake's legs were shaking. His vision was blurred. But he managed to look at Kethra and smile. "I told you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Humans do not know how to quit." Kethra stared at him. Her skin had shifted to a color he had never seen before, a warm gold that seemed to pulse with light. Through the bond, he could feel her emotions, surprise, relief, and something deeper, something that might have been the beginning of real affection. "You stayed," she breathed. "You stayed till dawn." Jake swayed on his feet. The room was spinning around him. He had done it. He had survived. The last thing he saw before he collapsed was Kethra reaching out to catch him, her golden skin glowing in the light of 3 rising suns. He had won. Jake woke up in a soft bed with sunlight streaming through crystal windows. For a moment, he did not know where he was or what had happened. Then the memories came flooding back. The bonding ritual. Kethra's memories mixing with his own. The endless night that he had somehow survived. He sat up slowly, his body aching like he had fought a dozen battles. His head felt strange, full in a way it had never been before. And then he realized why. Kethra was there. Not in the room with him, but in his mind. He could feel her presence like a second heartbeat, warm and steady. Through the bond, he knew that she was in a council meeting on the other side of the palace. He could sense her emotions, her frustration with the arguing nobles, her impatience. She felt him wake up. Even across the distance, he sensed her attention shift toward him. "Rest," her voice said in his mind. It was not spoken aloud, just a thought passing between them. "You are still recovering." "I am fine," he thought back. You collapsed and slept for 2 days. You are not fine. 2 days. Jake blinked in surprise. The bonding ritual had taken more out of him than he realized. A servant entered the room with food and water. Jake ate slowly, his stomach unsure after so long without food. The servant watched him with something like awe. "Everyone is talking about you," she said quietly. "No human has ever survived the bonding ritual. They're saying you must be blessed by the ancient gods." Jake smiled weakly. "I am just stubborn." The servant left, and Jake spent the next hour getting his strength back. He could feel Cathra's meeting ending, and soon she appeared at his door. She looked different to him now, not just because of the bond, but because he had seen her entire life. He knew her fears and hopes. He knew the loneliness she hid behind her warrior mask. He knew her better than anyone in the galaxy. "How do you feel?" she asked, strange, full. He touched his head. "I can feel you in here. It will take some time to get used to. The bond takes adjustment." She sat down beside him on the bed. "But it becomes natural eventually, like having another part of yourself that you did not know was missing." Jake looked at her. Through the bond, he could feel her uncertainty, her hope. She wanted this to work. She wanted him to accept her. "I saw your memories," he said quietly. "All of them. The loneliness, the pressure, the way of being perfect all the time." Cathra's skin shifted to a darker purple. "I saw yours. The fear, the doubt, the way you push yourself because you feel like you are never good enough. We are more alike than either of us expected." "Yes." She met his eyes. And for the first time, there were no barriers between them. "We are." The next few days were chaos. News of Jake's survival spread across the galaxy. Human diplomats arrived to renegotiate the alliance treaty. Valari nobles argued about what this meant for their empire. Lord Vareth demanded that the marriage be cancelled, claiming that Jake must have cheated somehow. High Priestess Zoreth examined the bond 3 more times. Each time, she confirmed that it was real and complete. Jake and Cathura were truly married in the deepest Valari sense. Their minds were joined forever. "This changes everything," Emperor Kethan said during a formal audience. He was Cathra's grandfather, an ancient Valari who had ruled for 3,000 years. His skin was nearly white with age, and his galaxy eyes moved slowly. But there was still power in his voice. Jake stood before him with Cathra at his side. Through the bond, he could feel her nervousness. The Emperor's opinion mattered more than anyone else's. "Your Majesty," Jake said carefully, "I know this is unexpected, but I hope it can be the beginning of something better between our peoples." Emperor Kethan studied him for a long moment. "We have always believed other species to be lesser, weaker, incapable of true partnership. You have proven that belief wrong." "Humanity has been underestimated before," Jake replied. "It usually does not end well for those who underestimate us." Something that might have been amusement flickered in the Emperor's ancient eyes. "So, I am beginning to understand." Cathra stepped forward. "Grandfather, I have seen his memories. I have felt his essence. Humanity is not lesser. They are different. And in that difference, there is strength we have never encountered before." The Emperor was silent for a long time. The entire court held its breath. "Very well," he said finally. "The marriage will stand, and the alliance will be expanded." The relief that flooded through the bond was overwhelming. Jake felt Cathra's joy mixing with his own. Over the following weeks, the political situation shifted rapidly. Trade agreements were renegotiated. Military cooperation was expanded. For the first time in history, human officers were invited to serve on Valari ships, and Valari observers were welcomed on human vessels. Jake became a symbol of what was possible. Not because he was special, but because he had refused to give up. He had faced an impossible challenge and survived through sheer stubbornness. Admiral Costa sent him a message expressing what she called stunned congratulations. Jake suspected she had expected him to fail. Everyone had expected him to fail. That made his success even sweeter. One evening, Jake and HFY stood on a balcony overlooking the Crystal City. The three suns were setting, painting the sky in colors that had no names in human language. Through the bond, they shared the beauty without needing words. "What happens now?" Jake asked. "Now we live," HFY replied. "Now we show both our peoples what true partnership looks like. Now we change history together." Jake squeezed her hand. It felt right somehow. They were different species from different worlds, but the bond had made them one. "My people will have questions," he said. "They will want to know what the bond feels like, what it means to be joined to a Valari mind. What will you tell them?" Jake thought about it carefully. "I will tell them the truth. It is not easy. It is not comfortable, but it is worth it. Being truly known by another person, without any barriers or lies, is worth all the pain it takes to get there." HFY turned to look at him. Her skin was that warm gold color again, the one that meant happiness. Through the bond, he could feel her affection for him growing stronger every day. "You are a good man, Jake Harris," she said. "I am glad it was you. I am glad it was you too." They stood together as the suns disappeared below the horizon. In the distance, the lights of the Crystal City began to glow, and the night sky filled with unfamiliar stars. Jake had come to this world, expecting to sacrifice himself for a peace treaty. Instead, he had found something he never expected. A partner who understood him completely. A purpose bigger than himself. A future that neither humans nor Valari could have imagined alone. The war was over. The alliance was strong. And somewhere in the vastness of space, two species that had been enemies were learning to become friends. All because one stubborn human had refused to break dot in the years that followed. Jake and HFY became legends. Their story was told on 1,000 worlds, proof that understanding was possible, even between the most different of peoples. Human children grew up hearing about the commander who survived the bonding ritual. Valari children learned that strength came in many forms, not just the ones they expected. The galaxy was changing. It would not happen overnight. Prejudice and fear did not disappear just because of one successful marriage. But the door had been opened, and that was what mattered. On the anniversary of their wedding, Jake and HFY returned to the bonding chamber. They stood in the center of the crystal room, holding hands as they had on that first night. "Any regrets?" HFY asked. Jake smiled. Through the bond, she already knew the answer, but she liked to hear him say it. Not a single one. The three suns rose outside, their light filling the chamber with warmth and color. Jake and HFY watched together, two hearts beating as one. As a new day began, the human had stayed strong till dawn, and in staying strong, he had changed everything. The end.